So today we'll start with the exceptions. Usually, whenever you have any syntactical error in the compiler when you run it, you'll be getting what is the error below in the console. Sometimes what happens is for few of the inputs, the value will appear properly, but when you run the program, for few of the inputs, probably it is not behaving as expected. So one of the example would be the one which is shown here, that is arithmetic exception, where you have value x, which is taken by, it is the quotient when you divide 10 by 0. So whenever you divide an integer by integer, and especially the denominator is 0, you will get divide by 0 error. So that becomes an exception. If it was 10 divided by 2, you would have gotten the result as 5. There, you would not get any kind of exception. The program would execute properly. Now, imagine that there is 1,000 lines of code in the file. What happens is your code is running fine from line 1 to line 20. And in line 21, if there is any exception, what happens is if we don't handle it, rest of the lines, that is somewhere around 980 lines of code, will never be getting executed. So sometimes we need to be cautious, like what can be the exception that can happen, and then we need to avoid, or we need to handle that kind of a situation by using try catch block. By usually we say that as exception handling. So in this, usually what kind of exceptions would occur? Invalid user input. Like if I'm asking for something which is like a string, enter the name, and then the user is providing a number. And that time there can be a mismatch, hardware failures, network issues, programming mistakes, and resource not found. Usually what happens is whenever you're trying to communicate with APIs and stuff, that time there can be some network issues which is happening. And if we are trying to test a particular device from our machine, and then we are not trying to get, when we try to give the input, or we try to retrieve the output from there, then if there is any failure, it comes to the hardware failure part. Programming mistake, obviously we know that we tend to make them sometimes. Resource not found would be one example for this kind of scenario would be we are trying to fetch some data from the file, but the file doesn't exist in that particular location itself. That can be counted as a resource not found. Now, in types of exception, there can be checked. That means usually in the compile time, we'll be able to notice unchecked exceptions, that is during runtime, and some of the errors. Some basic examples would be IO exception, that is input output, with respect to what kind of devices is being connected, streaming, and all the stuff. There, it can be one of the issue. SQL exception would be like I'm trying to connect to my database, but the database doesn't exist, or there is a problem in the server, all those kind of issues. File not found exception. Usually, what happens is if I'm trying to read a file like ABC and then it is not present at that point of time, I can, like, I'll be able to figure out, I'll have to put this in a try catch block and check if it is not existing, then I have to catch that error in the catch block. Okay. And with unchecked exceptions like arithmetic exception, like imagine if I'm giving sum is equal to a divided by b. At that point of time, b can be 0 or any other number. So if b is 0, then we handle the exception, otherwise not. Null pointer will be the one example which we have shown here. That is, we have taken a string and it is given the value as null. And whenever an object is given a null value, that means we didn't store anything in that particular location. And if you are trying to find the length, obviously it will give you null pointer exception. There are only 5 elements in the array, and we are trying to find the 70th element in the array which is not present. That time index out of bound exception, number format exceptions. Wherever we are trying to get an integer, or if there is the format that is trying we are trying to get is not available, and then we go for number format exception. Now, in error, sometimes what happens is I'm trying to create the object every now and then. At that point of time, I'm not keeping in mind that there might be no memory available at all. Maybe I'm trying to create a bigger object or something, or there might be stack overflow conditions. Those kind of system level issues, whichever we have, those things come under the errors. Now, with respect to exceptions, we have the hierarchy. From throwable, we have two parts, that is exception and error. Under exception, we have checked and then runtime exception. We'll see the examples one by one. We'll try to do a try catch block. So what we are going to do, I'll create a project. I'll name it as exceptions. And here I'm going to create a new class. Exception try catch. I'm going to give com dot examples of exception. So in this, we'll try to take int a comma b comma sum. Sorry, not sum, quotient. So basically what happens is I'll try to ask the user to give me the values. So scanner is important. Scanner is coming from java.util. I'm going to say enter the value of a. A is equal to ob dot next int. Similarly, I'm going to take for b. B is equal to ob dot next int. And then quotient will be equal to a divided by b. And I'm going to show this to the user. Now, when I run this, 11, and if I'm going to take 9, 11 divided by 9 should be 1 point something, but because it is an integer division, we'll get the quotient as 1. But if I'm going to take 11 and denominator as 0, you got an exception here. That is, this is coming from arithmetic exception, that is coming from java.lang. How to handle this? I can put this thing in the try catch block, this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm encompassing the things that might throw error here. Okay, and then catch arithmetic exception E. And here I'm going to write exception is equal to, in exception E, I'll try to get the message. Now, if I run this, if I give 11, 0, you'll get that exception divide by 0. If I'm going to run 11, 2, you're getting the quotient as 5. Okay, this is one exception. And if we come down to this, multiple catch blocks. So here, by the way, if I'm not very sure like what kind of exception I'm going to get at that point of time, we can have a generic exception. That one I'll probably in the next example we'll try to give it a shot. What I'm going to do is I'll create one array. Okay. I'll try to give index out of range. So what happens here? I'll take an integer array. Okay, 4 elements. And I'm going to ask the user to enter an index. Okay. And I'm just trying to print that particular value in that index. and the value in the index will be given by A of index. And this should be taken by the user. Index is equal to ob dot next int, because all the index will obviously be integer type. So if I give an index which is available, because we have 4 elements, index starts with 0, 1, 2, 3. Anything above 3 should give me error. First I'll check for the valid condition. If I give to 0, 1, 2, that is 33 is getting shown. But if I run this and if I get, let us say, I'll try to get index of 8, I'm getting array out of index exception. So if I know that this is giving the error, what I'll do, I'll put this in the try catch block. Try. Okay, and then catch. Array index out of bound exception, and this out. Here I'm going to give okay. You should understand that the index should be ranging between 0 to length minus 1. Once we'll run this, if I'm going to give 8, then the total number of elements in the array is 4. Now, if it is a valid one, what I'll do is I'll try to divide it and store it in the result. A of index divided by 2. Okay. And I'm going to take here catch generic exception. Anything other than array out of bound will fall here. Okay. We'll run this. Now, if I give a valid number, that is 33, which is fine. And right now we didn't get any other error because I had to actually print the result as well. Okay, we'll run this. So if I give index to 33, 33 divided by 2 is giving me 16, 16.5, but we are neglecting the in decimal part. Now there it didn't go into the what is the generic exception, neither we had array out of bound exception. But just in case, if I give it as 0, see what happens. It came here, it printed 33. 33 divided by 0 is checking whether it is an array index out of bound. We didn't get that. We went into the generic exception. In the generic exception, what kind of exception we got? Divide by 0. But if I know that this can happen, the divide by 0 error can happen, then what I'll do? I'll have another multiple catch statements. Already we have catch array index out of bound and one generic. But if I'm very specific that I know that arithmetic exception I may get, then sorry, divide by 0 I may get. Mm. So this is fine now. If it is generic, it will come to the generic exception. Otherwise, it will go, if it is arithmetic exception, then it will go down here. So if you run right now, I'll give 2, which is good. that is 33. 33 divided by 0 is arithmetic exception. It came down here, this part. If you want to be more specific, you can write down this. If I give it as 2 or something, let us say, then there is no error. 22 is the index, 33 divided by 2, result is equal to 16, which is fine. If I threw an index which is 9, it is going to give this particular error because it came to array index out of range. It will not even do this. Then if I give a valid index that is 233, which is fine. And instead of 2, if I took one more variable, let us say int b, and I'll ask the user to enter the b value, and b is equal to ob dot next int. If I do this, then instead of 2, I can take it as b. This is how the error might occur. Okay. So now if you run this, if I give 2, b value, I'm going to give it as 0. So arithmetic. If b value I gave non-zero number, then it is going to give you the result. So this is the first part of exception handling. We did what? What is an exception? We try to wrap it with the try catch block. We did arithmetic exception. We did array out of bound and generic one. Multiple catch statements we have done. In the next set of examples, we'll learn a little bit more.